Harrison Prescott stood on the deck of his super yacht, a glass of vintage cristal in one hand and the waist of a 23-year-old model in the other. He believed he was the king of the world, celebrating the imminent divorce that would leave his pregnant wife with pennies. But 3,000 miles away, inside a silent Manhattan penthouse, the ink was already drying on a document that Harrison hadn't bothered to read. Betrayal doesn't always come with a scream. Sometimes it comes with a signature. This is the story of how a neglected wife didn't just leave her cheating billionaire husband, she legally stole his entire empire without him noticing until it was far, far too late. The Mediterranean sun didn't just shine on the Amalfi Coast. It seemed to perform specifically for Harrison Prescott. At 46, Harrison was the face of Prescott Global, a logistics and shipping conglomerate that moved half the world's luxury goods. He was a man who measured his worth in the billions and his morality in the gray areas of international maritime law. Today, the deck of his 200-foot super yacht, the Sovereign was awash in the sounds of clinking crystal and the soft rhythmic thrum of deep house music. "You seem tenser than usual, Harry," Sienna cooed, tracing the rim of her champagne flute with a manicured nail. At 23, Sienna Cole was everything Harrison felt he deserved, vibrant, uncomplicated, and exclusively focused on his pleasure. She was an Instagram model who had accidentally bumped into him at a charity gala in Dubai 6 months ago, a meeting Harrison now assumed was fate rather than the result of Sienna's calculated research. Harrison adjusted his linen shirt, glancing at his satellite phone sitting on the teak table. "Just waiting for the confirmation, Sienna. It's a big day." "The merger?" she asked, feigning interest in business. "Better," Harrison smirked, taking a sip of the cold champagne. "The unmerger. My lawyers in New York are serving Vanessa today. By the time the sun sets here, I'll be technically single, and thanks to the ironclad prenup I forced her to sign 10 years ago, she walks away with the apartment furniture and a monthly allowance that wouldn't cover your shoe budget." Sienna giggled, a sound that usually delighted him, but today felt slightly grating. "But isn't she, expecting?" Harrison waved his hand dismissively. 7 months along. It's perfect timing, actually. The courts hate disrupting the status quo for a newborn. I'll get custody because I have the resources, she'll get visitation, and I'll have the freedom to finally put a ring on a finger that appreciates it. He squeezed Sienna's hand significantly. He didn't mention that the timing was manufactured. Harrison had deliberately waited until Vanessa was in her 3rd trimester. He knew she was exhausted, swollen and suffering from preeclampsia. He counted on her being too weak to fight. He wanted her crushed, not just divorced. The phone buzzed. Harrison snatched it up. It was a text from his lead litigator, a shark named Archer. Papers served. No reaction. She just took the envelope and went back to the nursery. "It's done." Harrison let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "It's done," he announced to the Amalfi air. "I'm a free man." "To freedom," Sienna cheered, raising her glass. Harrison smiled, looking out at the glittering water. He felt invincible. He had successfully hidden $300 million in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands just last week, assets Vanessa's forensic accountants would never find. He had the girl, he had the money, and he had the victory. But as he leaned back, planning to order the captain to set a course for Capri, he didn't notice the slight vibration of his Apple Watch. A notification from his primary banking app flickered on the screen, then disappeared. "Transaction declined, limit exceeded." He frowned. That was impossible. He had an unlimited black card. He tapped the screen, dismissing it as a glitch in the Italian telecommunications network. Nothing could ruin this day. "Order whatever you want for dinner, babe," Harrison said, closing his eyes. "Caviar truffles get the chef to fly in Wagyu from Kobe. I don't care what it costs." Sienna signaled the steward, her eyes gleaming. "You're the best, Harry." Harrison smirked. He was the best. He was the predator who had eaten the world. He had no idea that back in New York, the prey had just finished eating him alive. New York City was weeping rain, a stark contrast to the Italian sunshine Harrison was basking in. Inside the penthouse at 432 Park Avenue, a residence that hovered above the clouds, Vanessa Prescott sat in a high-backed velvet chair. She did not look like a woman who had just been served divorce papers. She looked like a queen on a throne of ice. Her hands, resting on the swell of her 7-month pregnant belly, were steady. Vanessa was 38, a former corporate contract lawyer who had given up her career to support Harrison's rise. Harrison had forgotten that. He remembered her as the trophy wife he'd molded, forgetting she was the one who had proofread his initial business plans. He saw her silence as submission. He never realized she was simply gathering data. Sitting across from her was Leonard Banks. Leo was technically Harrison's personal estate attorney, a man who had been on the Prescott payroll for 15 years. Harrison treated Leo like a glorified secretary, often berating him in public and underpaying him relative to the sharks like Archer. Harrison didn't know that Leo had been in love with Vanessa since college. He didn't know that Leo and Vanessa met for tea every Tuesday, while Harrison was away on business with his mistresses. "Did Archer leave?" Leo asked, his voice low. 10 minutes ago," Vanessa said, her voice devoid of emotion. She nudged the thick envelope of divorce papers across the marble coffee table with a disdainful finger. "Harrison wants to settle for $2 million and the Hamptons house. He thinks I'm destitute." Leo adjusted his glasses, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. "It's adorable that he thinks he still owns the Hamptons house." Vanessa picked up a cup of herbal tea. "Walk me through it one last time, Leo. I want to be sure." Leo opened his leather briefcase and spread out a timeline of documents. It started 6 months ago, the medical proxy Harrison signed before his trip to Singapore. Vanessa nodded. He was in a rush. He was meeting that actress. He didn't read it. "Correct," Leo said. "He thought he was signing a standard healthcare proxy in case he got sick abroad. But page 4, paragraph 12, contained a durable power of attorney with gifting provisions. It gave you the authority to reorganize his personal assets for estate planning purposes in the event of his absence." "And he's been absent a lot," Vanessa murmured. Then Leo continued, moving to the next document. There was the shell company restructuring. Harrison moved his liquid assets, about $300 million, to Chimera Holdings in the Caymans last week to hide them from you for the divorce. "He thought he was being clever," Vanessa said. "He was," Leo agreed. "But because you hold power of attorney, and because I am the registered agent for his trust, we were able to legally alter the beneficiary of Chimera Holdings." Leo slid a single sheet of paper forward. It was a transfer of beneficial interest. "Chimera Holdings doesn't belong to Harrison anymore," Leo said softly. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, the sole beneficiary of the trust is the unborn child of Vanessa Prescott, with you named as the irrevocable trustee with full executive control." Vanessa looked at the paper. It was valid. It was legal. It was lethal. "And the company stock?" she asked. "That was the hardest part," Leo admitted. "But Harrison's arrogance saved us. When he took the company private last year to avoid shareholder scrutiny, he consolidated the voting shares into the Prescott Family Trust. The bylaws state that if the primary holder Harrison is deemed compromised, or involved in actions detrimental to the moral standing of the company, the secondary trustee can trigger a vote of no confidence. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. And the secondary trustee is... You, Leo said. He put you there years ago, because he thought you were too passive to ever use it. He wanted a rubber stamp. So we need proof of moral detriment, Vanessa said. Leo pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Sienna Cole posted a video on TikTok an hour ago. It's her and Harrison on the yacht. In the background there are clear lines of white powder on the table, and Harrison is heard bragging about bribing the port authority in Greece to bypass customs. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. He's that stupid. He feels untouchable, Leo corrected. I sent the video to the ethics board of the shipping conglomerate an hour ago. They triggered the clause. As of right now, your vote is the majority. You voted to strip him of CEO status and freeze his equity. Vanessa placed a hand on her stomach. The baby kicked a strong, reassuring thump. So, Vanessa whispered, what does he have left? Leo closed his folder with a satisfying snap. The cash in his wallet, the clothes on his back, and a credit card bill that is about to be declined. Vanessa stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the grey city. She didn't feel sad. She had mourned the death of her marriage 2 years ago, when she found the second phone. Now she only felt the cold clarity of execution. Cancel his return flight, Leo, Vanessa commanded, and change the locks on the Hamptons house. I'm moving the nursery there tomorrow. And when he calls, Leo asked, standing up to leave. Vanessa turned her silhouette, framed by the storm clouds. Let it ring. The embarrassment began at dinner. Harrison was holding court at L'Olivo, the only 2 Michelin-star restaurant on the island of Capri. He had ordered the entire menu for the table, surrounded by Sienna and a group of sycophants they had picked up at the marina, a mix of minor European royalty and tech bros who hung on Harrison's every word. So I told the senator, Harrison boomed, gesturing with a forkful of lobster, if you want the supply chain to move, you get out of my way. And he did. They always do. The table erupted in laughter. Sienna leaned in, kissing his cheek. You're so powerful, baby. The maitre d', a man named Giovanni, who usually treated Harrison like a god, approached the table. He looked pale. He was holding a small leather bill folder and Harrison's Centurion black card. Harrison frowned, annoyed at the interruption. Giovanni had a 30% tip. Don't bore me with the receipt. Mr. Prescott, Giovanni whispered, leaning down, so only Harrison could hear. I am terribly sorry. The card, it was declined. Harrison laughed, a loud barking sound. Declined. It's a Centurion. It has no limit. Run it again. We did, sir. 3 times. The terminal says card reported lost or stolen. Confiscate immediately. Harrison's blood ran cold, then hot with rage. That's ridiculous. It's a bank error. He pulled out his platinum corporate card. Use this one. 5 minutes later, Giovanni returned. He looked even more pained. The restaurant had gone quiet. The other diners were watching. Mr. Prescott, this one is also declined. Code 05, do not honor. Sienna pulled back her smile, faltering. Harry? What's going on? Nothing. Harrison snapped, slamming his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. My bank is obviously having a system-wide failure. Do you know who I am? He stood up, towering over the maitre d'. I could buy this restaurant and turn it into a garage. I'm sure, sir, Giovanni said, his voice hardening. But until the bill of 12,000 euros is paid, I cannot let you leave. Perhaps one of your guests. Harrison looked around the table. The tech bros suddenly found their shoes very interesting. The minor royalty looked away. Sienna was checking her phone, her thumb scrolling rapidly. "Sienna," Harrison hissed. "Give him your card. I'll wire you the cash in the morning plus 10 grand for the trouble." Sienna looked up. Her eyes were different. The adoration was gone, replaced by a sharp, calculating look that reminded Harrison terrifyingly of a young Vanessa. "I can't, Harry," she said, her voice high and fake. "My card has a limit. Besides, I just got a DM." "A what?" "A DM from a gossip page." She turned her phone screen toward him. It was a breaking news alert from the Wall Street Journal. The headline screamed in bold black letters. "Prescott Global Oosts, CEO, Harrison. Prescott amidst embezzlement probe. Wife. Vivian Clark named interim trustee." Harrison felt the blood drain from his face. The room spun. That's fake. That's fake news." He scrambled for his phone. He dialed Archer, his shark lawyer. "The number you have reached is no longer in service." The automated voice droned. He dialed Leo. "Ring, ring, ring. Pick up, you incompetent fool," Harrison snarled. "Ring, ring, click." "Hello, Harrison," came the voice. But it wasn't Leo. It was a woman's voice. Smooth, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. "Vanessa," Harrison choked out. "Why do you have Leo's phone?" "What the hell is going on? My cards are frozen." "Hello, Harrison," Vanessa said. He could hear the rain in the background. "Leo is busy. He's overseeing the movers." "Movers? What movers?" "I'm turning the penthouse into a yoga studio," she said pleasantly. "The fumes from your cigars were always so hard to get out of the curtains." "Vanessa, listen to me," Harrison roared, not caring that the entire restaurant was filming him now. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I will destroy you. I have millions in the Cayman accounts. I'll hire an army of lawyers." "Oh, the Chimera Holdings account," Vanessa asked, her tone feigning confusion. "The one you so generously transferred to our son's trust fund." "That was very noble of you, Harrison. Leo said the paperwork was flawless." Harrison's knees gave out. He fell back into his chair. No, I didn't sign that." "You sign a lot of things without reading them, Harrison. It's your tragic flaw. That and the women." Harrison looked at Sienna. She was standing up. She had grabbed her Hermes bag, a bag he had bought her yesterday. "Where are you going?" Harrison gasped. "I'm not going to be seen with an embezzler, Harry," Sienna said, stepping away from him. "It's bad for my brand. Thanks for the trip, though." She walked out without looking back. "Vanessa," Harrison whispered into the phone, his voice trembling. "I'm in Italy. I have no money. I can't pay the bill. They're going to call the police." "I know," Vanessa said. Leo checked the Italian penal code. Theft of services over 10,000 euros carries a mandatory holding period. The Italian prisons are quite rustic, I hear. "You can't do this. I'm your husband." "Not for long," she replied. "The annulment papers will be waiting for you when you get extradited." "Oh, and Harrison." "What?" he sobbed. "Don't worry about the baby. He'll never know you existed." Click. Harrison Prescott stared at the dead phone. The maitre d' signaled 2 carabinieri officers who had just entered the restaurant. They were walking toward him, handcuffs gleaming under the chandelier lights. Harrison looked at the unfinished lobster, the flat champagne, and the empty chair where his mistress had sat. For the first time in his life, the bill had arrived, and he couldn't pay it. The flight from Rome to New York usually took 9 hours of champagne service and live flat beds in the first-class cabin of the Sovereign Harrison's private Gulfstream. This time, however, Harrison Prescott made the journey in seat 42E of a commercial airliner sandwiched between a crying toddler and a backpacker who smelled of stale patchouli. He had been held in a Neapolitan holding cell for 4 days. It took that long for the U.S. consulate to arrange his emergency travel documents, as his passport had been misplaced by the Italian authorities, a bureaucratic accident that Harrison suspected was another lever pulled by Vanessa's legal team. He had been released only after signing a promissory note for the restaurant bill, a debt that would hang over him like a sword. He landed at JFK International Airport at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. The terminal was chaotic, an assault of noise and smells he hadn't experienced in decades. He stepped out of the arrivals hall, instinctively looking for the black placard with Prescott written in gold lettering. He looked for his driver, Thomas, who had been with him for 12 years. There was no Thomas. There was no Lincoln Navigator. There was only a line of yellow taxis and the humid, exhaust-filled air of Queens. Harrison checked his pockets. He had €70 in cash, his dead phone, and the platinum watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe Nautilus, worth more than the average house. It was his only lifeline. He hailed a cab, the act feeling foreign and degrading. 432 Park Avenue, Harrison barked at the driver, a man with tired eyes named Gregor. And step on it. I'll make it worth your while. Gregor looked in the rearview mirror, eyeing Harrison's wrinkled linen suit, the same one he'd worn on the yacht, now stained and rumpled. Meter starts now, buddy. You got cash? Just drive, Harrison snapped. The ride into Manhattan was a blur of anxiety. Harrison's mind raced. He needed to get to the safe in his study. He kept $50,000 in cash there, along with emergency gold bars. He needed to get to his backup phone. He needed to call Archer and sue Vanessa until she was living in a cardboard box. The anger fueled him, burning away the exhaustion. She thinks she can steal my company. My life, she's a contract lawyer, a paper pusher. I am a titan. The taxi pulled up to the towering needle of 432 Park Avenue. Harrison threw the €70 at the driver. This is all I have. It's worth more than the fare. Keep the change. Gregor cursed, but took the money. Harrison scrambled out, marching toward the glass doors of the lobby. He expected the usual greeting, the doormen rushing to open the door, the concierge nodding with respect. Instead, the revolving door was locked. Harrison frowned, pushing against the glass. He saw the head of security, a burly man named Frank, standing inside. Frank looked right at him, his face impassive. "Frank," Harrison yelled, banging on the glass. "Open the damn door! It's me!" Frank didn't move. He simply tapped the earpiece in his ear and spoke a few words. A moment later, 2 police officers, who had been standing near the reception desk, walked toward the door. Harrison stepped back, confused. The door hissed open. "Harrison Prescott?" one of the officers asked. "Yes, finally." Harrison straightened his jacket. "My wife has locked me out. I want to file a complaint. I live here." "Not anymore, sir," the officer said, handing him a folded paper. "We have a restraining order on file, issued by Judge Holloway yesterday. You are not to come within 500 feet of this residence, or Ms. Vanessa Clark." "Ms. Clark," Harrison choked. "Her name is Prescott. The order says Clark, sir, and we have a strict trespass notice from the building management. The lease on the penthouse was transferred to a blind trust this morning. You're not on the list." Harrison stared at Frank. "Frank, tell them I gave you a $5,000 Christmas bonus." Frank finally spoke, his voice coming through the open door, heavy with a decade of suppressed resentment. "Mr. Prescott, You gave me a $500 gift card to a steakhouse you own, and it expired before I could use it. Please step away from the building." The humiliation hit Harrison like a physical blow. The pedestrians were staring. A tourist was filming him. "This is insane," Harrison muttered. "I have clothes in there. I have my medication. I have my property." "Your personal effects were boxed and moved to a storage facility in New Jersey," the officer said, bored. "Here is the address and the key." He pressed a small brass key into Harrison's hand. Harrison looked at the key. It was tiny, cheap, and pathetic. "I'm not going to New Jersey," Harrison hissed. "I'm going to my office." He turned on his heel, adrenaline surging again. If he couldn't go home, he would go to the seat of his power. Prescott Global Headquarters was only 10 blocks away. He would walk. He would storm into the boardroom, fire everyone, and sleep on the couch in his executive suite until he fixed this mess. He began to walk his Italian loafers, blistering his feet, a king returning to his castle to find the drawbridge raised. The headquarters of Prescott Global was a 40-story monolith of steel and glass on 6th Avenue. It was a monument to Harrison's ego. The lobby was 3 stories high, dominated by a massive abstract sculpture he had commissioned for $2 million. Harrison burst through the revolving doors, sweating and disheveled. The cool air conditioning hit him, but it didn't calm him. He marched straight toward the private elevator bank, reserved for top executives. "Mr. Prescott." The voice didn't belong to a receptionist. It belonged to Liam Thorne. Harrison stopped. Liam was his former COO, a man Harrison had fired 2 years ago for lacking killer instinct, which was code for Liam refusing to sign off on a risky, borderline illegal shipping route through a conflict zone. Liam had been a good man, a family man, and Harrison had destroyed his reputation on the way out. Now, Liam was standing in the center of the lobby, wearing a suit that cost more than Harrison's car. He was flanked by 2 security guards. "Liam." Harrison squinted. "What are you doing here? Get out of my way. I have a company to run." Liam smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man watching a car crash in slow motion. "Actually, Harrison, I'm the new acting CEO," Liam said smoothly. "Vanessa appointed me yesterday. The board ratified it unanimously this morning." Harrison felt the floor sway. You're a coward, Liam. You couldn't run a lemonade stand." "Maybe," Liam shrugged. "But I also don't embezzle company funds to buy yachts for Instagram models. The forensic audit is already halfway done, Harrison. It's impressive. You were very creative with the logistics consulting fees. Those were legitimate expenses." Harrison screamed, his voice echoing off the marble walls. Employees were stopping to watch. Interns were whispering. "Tell that to the SEC," Liam said. "They're in the conference room right now. Vanessa gave them full access to your hard drives." "She can't do that spousal privilege." "Not when the spouse is the victim of the fraud," Liam corrected. "Vanessa isn't just your wife, Harrison. She's the majority shareholder now. You signed the voting rights over to the trust. Remember the Family Security Act you pushed through to avoid estate taxes?" Harrison remembered. He had bragged about it at the club. "I put it all in a trust so the IRS can't touch it, and I control the trust." But he hadn't controlled the trust. He had made Vanessa the successor trustee, assuming she would always be his silent shadow. "I want to see her," Harrison demanded, his voice dropping to a growl. "Where is she?" "She's not here," Liam said. "She's at the hospital." Harrison blinked. "The baby?" "Routine checkup," Liam said quickly. "But she did leave something for you." Liam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a plain white envelope. He held it out. Harrison snatched it. He tore it open. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph was of Harrison and Sienna on the yacht taken just days ago. But it wasn't a paparazzi shot. It was taken from inside the yacht. The note read, "Sienna was expensive, Harrison, but her loyalty was surprisingly cheap. She sent me the videos herself when I offered to pay off her student loans. It was a business transaction. I knew you'd appreciate the efficiency." Harrison crumpled the note. Sienna had been the mole. The girl who couldn't spell logistics had been feeding evidence to Vanessa. "You're all in on it," Harrison whispered. "This is a conspiracy." "It's a corporate restructuring," Liam said coldly. "Now security is going to escort you out. If you return, you will be arrested for trespassing. And Harrison..." Harrison looked up, his eyes wild. "Don't try to sell the Patek," Liam said, pointing to the watch on Harrison's wrist. "Vanessa reported it stolen this morning. It's listed as company property on the insurance manifest. No pawn shop in the city will touch it." Harrison covered the watch with his other hand. They had thought of everything. They had stripped him not just of his wealth, but of his liquidity, his shelter, and his dignity. 2 guards stepped forward. Harrison didn't fight. He was too shocked to fight. He let them guide him toward the revolving doors back out into the heat and the noise of 6th Avenue. He stood on the sidewalk, the towering building reflecting the afternoon sun. He was Harrison Prescott. He had built this skyline, and now he was just another man on the street, hungry, homeless, and holding a crumpled note from the wife he had underestimated for a decade. His stomach grumbled. He hadn't eaten since the plane. He looked at a hot dog cart on the corner. The smell of onions and processed meat wafted toward him. He put his hand in his pocket and found the 70 euros. Useless here. He checked his other pocket and found a single American quarter. 25 cents. Harrison Prescott, billionaire, started walking. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he had to find a phone that wasn't dead. He had to find someone who still feared him. But as he merged into the crowd, invisible for the first time in his life, he realized the terrifying truth. Without his money, nobody feared him. They didn't even see him. Night had fallen over New York City, transforming the glass canyons of Manhattan into a glittering labyrinth. For Harrison Prescott, however, the city was no longer a playground. It was a cage. He sat in the back booth of a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen, nursing a lukewarm beer he had paid for with the handful of change he'd scrounged from his suit pockets. The air smelled of stale hops and desperation. He was waiting for the one man who operated outside the law, outside the reach of Vanessa's forensic accountants and Liam Thorne's corporate security. He was waiting for Nikolai. Nikolai was a consultant Harrison had used years ago to intimidate a union leader who was threatening a strike at the Jersey docks. Nikolai didn't care about frozen assets or SEC investigations. He dealt in favors and cash. Harrison didn't have cash, but he had something more valuable information. Harrison touched the inside of his heel. Hidden within the hollowed-out sole of his left Italian loafer was a micro SD card. It contained the blueprints for Prescott Global's next-generation automated shipping drones technology worth billions to competitors like Amazon or Maersk. If he couldn't rule the company, he would sell its secrets and disappear to a non-extradition country. The door opened. A gust of humid night air swirled in, followed by a man in a nondescript grey raincoat. Nikolai hadn't aged well. His face was a road map of scars and bad decisions, but his eyes were sharp. He spotted Harrison and slid into the booth opposite him. "You look like hell, Harry. Nikolai rumbled, his voice like gravel grinding in a mixer. "I saw the news. Embezzler. Fraud. Wife took the dog and the house." "She took everything," Harrison hissed, leaning in. "But she missed one thing. I have the drone schematics, Nikolai. The source code. It's fully patent pending, but if we sell it to the Chinese market tonight, I can be in Macau by morning." Nikolai signaled the bartender for a whiskey. He didn't look excited. He looked bored. "The drone schematics?" Nikolai asked, picking at a fingernail. "Project Icarus. Yes, it's worth 50 million on the black market, easy. I just need you to make the connection. I'll give you 20%. Nikolai chuckled a dry, humorless sound. He pulled a smartphone from his pocket and slid it across the sticky table. "Look at this." Harrison looked. It was a press release from Prescott Global, issued 2 hours ago. Prescott Global announces open source initiative project, Icarus released to public domain, to revolutionize global shipping sustainability. Harrison stared at the screen, the words swimming before his eyes. What is this? Your wife?" Nikolai said, taking a sip of his whiskey. "She released the tech, open source, free, for everyone. She said it was a gift to the world to offset the carbon footprint of the previous administration, meaning you. She gave it away." Harrison's voice cracked. "She burned $1 billion asset just to spite me." "She didn't just burn the asset, Harry," Nikolai said softly. "She burned your leverage. That card in your shoe, it's worthless plastic now. You have nothing to sell." Harrison slumped against the cracked vinyl of the booth. The sheer scale of Vanessa's strategy was suffocating. She wasn't just checkmating him. She was flipping the board and setting the table on fire. "I need money, Nikolai," Harrison begged, his pride finally shattering. "I need a loan. 10 grand. I'll pay you back double when I win the lawsuit." Nikolai shook his head slowly. "You aren't going to win, Harry. And you aren't a good investment anymore. You're a liability." Nikolai stood up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. He dropped it on the table next to Harrison's lukewarm beer. "For a cab," Nikolai said, "or a meal. Don't call me again." Harrison watched him leave. He was alone. He stumbled out of the bar an hour later, the alcohol buzzing in his empty stomach. He had nowhere to go. The storage unit in New Jersey was miles away, and he couldn't bring himself to go there. He wandered toward Central Park, drawn by the familiarity of the Upper East Side. He found himself standing outside a townhouse on 64th Street. It belonged to his mother. She had passed away 5 years ago, but the house was still in the family trust. Maybe the key code still worked. Maybe he could sleep on the antique rug in the foyer. He punched the code into the keypad on the service entrance. 1980, his birth year. The light flashed red. Access denied. He tried again. Red. Then the intercom buzzed. A voice crackled. Through the speaker. It wasn't the housekeeper. It was a man's voice. "Can I help you? This is Harrison Prescott," he shouted at the speaker. "This is my mother's house, let me in. Mr. Prescott," the voice said, polite but firm. "The property was sold 3 days ago. The new owners are currently renovating. Please leave the premises, or we will call the police." "Sold," Harrison screamed at the brick wall. "Who sold it?" "The Vanessa Prescott Trust," the voice replied. "Proceeds went to the Harrison Prescott Rehabilitation Fund for victims of corporate greed. It's a charity, sir. Very generous." Harrison fell to his knees on the sidewalk. A charity in his name. She was mocking him from every angle. She had taken his past, his present, and his future, and she was rewriting his legacy into a joke. It started to rain again. Harrison curled up on a park bench under the awning of a bus stop, clutching his knees to his chest. The man who had sipped Cristal on a super yacht 48 hours ago closed his eyes, shivering in a bespoke suit that was now just wet rags. The winter in New York that year was the coldest on record. For Harrison Prescott, the chill was not just meteorological. It was a constant gnawing presence in his bones. It had been 6 months since his return from Italy. 6 months since the king of logistics had been dethroned. He lived now in a basement studio in Astoria, Queens, a space so cramped that he could touch the refrigerator while lying in bed. The walls were thin, vibrating with the sounds of the N train rumbling overhead and the arguments of the couple next door. His days of bespoke Italian suits were over. Now he wore a uniform, a grey polo shirt with the logo of Tri-State Haulage embroidered on the chest. He was a night shift dispatcher managing the schedules of truckers who shouted at him over static-filled radios. They called him Harry the Has-Been, a nickname that stung more than any corporate insult ever could because it was true. But today, he wasn't Harry the dispatcher. Today he had put on his one remaining suit, the charcoal Brooks Brothers he had bought at a consignment shop, and taken the subway into Manhattan. It was mediation day, the final act. The offices of Cromwell and Sullivan were located in the very same skyscraper district Harrison used to rule. As he walked through the lobby, security guards didn't salute him. They asked for his ID. He was visitor number 402. The elevator ride to the 50th floor was silent and suffocating. Harrison checked his reflection in the polished brass doors. His face was gaunt, the skin grey and slack. He had lost 30 pounds fueled by a diet of instant ramen and stress. His hair, once kept dark and lustrous by expensive stylists, was now showing its true colour, a defeated iron grey. The elevator dinged. "Mr. Prescott," the receptionist said without looking up. "Conference room B. They are waiting." Harrison walked down the plush hallway. The carpet was thick enough to silence his footsteps, but his heart was pounding loud enough to fill the corridor. He pushed open the heavy mahogany doors. The room was vast, dominated by a table that looked like a runway. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows showed the grey expanse of the Hudson River. Vanessa was already there. She sat at the head of the table, not the side. It was a power move, subtle but unmistakable. She looked breathtaking, not in the way his mistresses had been all flash and hunger. Vanessa looked like a fortress. She wore a tailored cream suit that probably cost more than his annual salary at the trucking company. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, severe bun, highlighting the sharp angles of her face. But it was what was next to her that stopped Harrison in his tracks. A stroller, a sleek modern thing in matte black. Harrison stood by the door, his hand gripping the brass handle. "You brought him." Vanessa looked up. Her eyes were cool, devoid of the warmth he remembered from the early years of their marriage. They were the eyes of a stranger. "He's breastfeeding," she said simply. "I couldn't leave him." Harrison took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the stroller. He couldn't see the baby, only the soft cashmere blanket tucked around a small form. Is that my son?" "Sit down, Harrison," Vanessa said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. Harrison pulled out the chair at the far end of the table. The distance between them felt like an ocean. Sitting next to Vanessa was Jessica Vance, her ruthless attorney, and next to Harrison sat a court-appointed mediator named Mr. Greaves, a tired-looking man with coffee stains on his tie. Harrison couldn't afford a lawyer. He was representing himself against a team that billed $2,000 an hour. We are here to finalize the dissolution of the marriage and the settlement of all outstanding civil litigation. Mr. Greaves began shuffling his papers. Mr. Prescott, you have reviewed the proposed agreement. Harrison looked at the thick stack of papers in front of him. He hadn't reviewed them. He didn't have the mental energy. He knew he was beaten. I just want to know one thing, Harrison said, ignoring the mediator and looking directly at Vanessa. Why didn't you just kill me? It would have been cleaner. Vanessa didn't blink. Death is too easy, Harrison. Dead men don't learn lessons. Besides, I needed you alive to sign these. Jessica Vance slid a specific document from the stack. It was just 3 pages, but the header was bold and terrifying. Voluntary relinquishment of parental rights and permanent restraining order. Harrison picked it up, his hands trembling slightly. You want me to give him up legally? It's the only way out. Harrison, Jessica said, her tone professional and icy. Let me remind you of your current situation. You are facing 3 separate civil lawsuits from the shareholders of Prescott Global for breach of fiduciary duty. You are facing a fraud investigation by the state of New York regarding the Cayman accounts, and you are currently $30,000 in debt for unpaid legal fees from your Italian extradition. Jessica paused for effect. Vanessa is offering you a lifeline. If you sign this document, if you agree to terminate your parental rights and agree to a permanent non-disparagement clause, she will withdraw the shareholder suits. She will use her position as the primary victim to petition for leniency in the fraud case, likely reducing it to a misdemeanor with probation. And she will write a check to cover your outstanding debts. Harrison felt the bile rise in his throat. It was a deal with the devil, so I sell my son. That's the price. You don't have a son. Vanessa spoke up. Her voice was sharper now. You have a biological byproduct of a marriage you destroyed. You've never held him. You've never seen him. You don't even know his name. I know his name, Harrison snapped. It's Harrison Jr. I told you that was the name. His name is Alexander, Vanessa said. Alexander Julian Clark. He has my name. He will never carry the Prescott name. That name is poisoned Harrison. Why would I burden an innocent child with a legacy of fraud and adultery? Harrison looked at the stroller again. The baby shifted, letting out a small, soft coo. The sound pierced Harrison's chest. It was the only pure thing in the room. I have rights, Harrison whispered, though he knew it was a lie. I could fight this. I could go to family court. A judge wouldn't keep a father from his son. A judge absolutely would, Jessica countered. We have the video from the yacht, Harrison, the cocaine, the bribery, the women. We have testimony from Sienna Cole that you referred to the pregnancy as an inconvenient delay to your divorce plans. Do you really want that read aloud in a family court? You'll be branded a danger to the child. You'll lose anyway, but you'll go to prison first. Harrison slumped in his chair. The room felt like it was shrinking. The walls were closing in. He looked at the document. The signature line waited for him like an open grave. Father's signature. If I sign, Harrison asked, his voice breaking, what happens to me? You walk away, Vanessa said. You go back to your job. You live your life. You stay away from us. If you ever come within 500 feet of Alexander or me or the company, the deal is void, and I will bury you under so much litigation you won't see the sun for a decade. Harrison looked at the pen. It was a heavy, expensive Mont Blanc. He remembered when he used to sign billion-dollar acquisition deals with pens like this. Now he was signing his own erasure. He picked up the pen. The metal was cold against his sweaty skin. He hesitated. Can I see him? Just once, before I sign." Vanessa stared at him for a long moment. The silence stretched thick and heavy. Finally, she nodded once. She stood up and walked to the stroller. She unbuckled the straps and lifted the baby out. Alexander was small, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. He had a tuft of dark hair and rosy cheeks. He was awake, his large, curious eyes scanning the room. Vanessa walked around the table, stopping a few feet from Harrison. She didn't hand the baby to him. She just held him up. Harrison looked into the baby's face, and then he saw it. The eyes. They were bright blue. His eyes. The Prescott eyes. For the first time in 20 years, tears welled up in Harrison's eyes. He reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch the baby's small foot. "Don't," Vanessa said sharply, pulling back slightly. "Just look. He looks like me," Harrison choked out. "He has your eyes," Vanessa admitted, "but I will make sure he never has your heart. I will raise him to be kind, to be loyal, to be honest, everything you weren't." The baby looked at Harrison, blinked, and then turned his head into Vanessa's chest, seeking comfort. He didn't know this man. To Alexander, Harrison was just a shadow in the room. That rejection, simple and instinctual, broke Harrison. He turned back to the table. He couldn't look anymore. The pain was too physical, a crushing weight on his lungs. He wanted to scream, to flip the table, to beg for another chance. But he knew there were no more chances. He had used them all up on models and yachts and lies. "Give me the paper," Harrison whispered. Jessica slid the document forward. Harrison didn't read the text. He couldn't. He just focused on the line. He pressed the pen to the paper. Harrison. His hand shook so badly the letters were jagged. Prescott. He dropped the pen. It rolled across the mahogany table with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "It's done," Harrison said. "I'm dead. I'm dead to him." Jessica Vance snatched the paper, immediately checking the signature for validity. She nodded to Vanessa. "The check," Jessica said. She slid a cashier's check across the table to Harrison. Harrison looked at it. $30,000, the price of a son. He picked it up. He didn't want it, but he needed it. He had rent due. He had debts. He hated himself for taking it, but survival instinct was the only thing he had left. "You can go now," Vanessa said. She was already putting Alexander back into the stroller, her back to him. Harrison stood up. His legs felt weak. He walked to the door but paused. He had to know one last thing. "Vanessa," he said. She paused, her hand on the stroller handle. "You loved me once," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a desperate plea for validation that his past life hadn't been a hallucination. "We were happy. In the beginning. Before the money. We were happy." Vanessa turned slowly. Her expression softened just a fraction. For a second, he saw the woman he had married 15 years ago. "We were," she said softly. "I loved you very much, Harrison. I loved the man who had big dreams and a kind laugh. But that man died a long time ago. I didn't kill him. You did. You starved him to feed your ego." She looked down at her son. "I'm just burying the corpse." Harrison opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. There was nothing left to say. The truth hung in the air, absolute and final. He turned and walked out of the room. The walk back to the elevator was a blur. He passed the reception desk. He passed the security guards. He pushed through the revolving doors and stumbled out onto the sidewalk. The cold wind hit him, biting through his thin suit. It had started to snow. Small icy flakes swirled around the skyscrapers. Harrison stood on the corner of 6th Avenue, surrounded by the rush of the city. People pushed past him, phones pressed to their ears, rushing to meetings, to deals, to lovers. They were all running the race he used to lead. He looked up at the building he had just left. Somewhere on the 50th floor, his wife, his ex-wife, was planning a future that didn't include him. His son was sleeping, dreaming of a world where Harrison Prescott didn't exist. Harrison looked at the check in his hand. $30,000. He walked to a trash can on the corner. For a second he thought about tearing it up, a final act of defiance, a way to prove he still had pride. But he didn't. He couldn't afford pride. He folded the check carefully and put it in his pocket. He turned toward the subway station. He had a shift tonight. A shipment of frozen poultry was coming in from Delaware, and he had to route the trucks. If he was late, his boss, a 25-year-old kid named Kyle, would write him up. Harrison descended the stairs into the subway, the darkness swallowing him whole. As he swiped his Metro card, a realization washed over him. It wasn't a sudden shock, but a slow, creeping coldness. He was free. No more lies to juggle. No more schemes to hide. No more empire to defend. He sat on the plastic bench of the subway platform, waiting for the train to Queens. He closed his eyes and listened to the screech of the approaching wheels. He was free, and he had never been more terrified in his life. And that is the tragic end of Harrison Prescott. He walked into that room a bankrupt billionaire and walked out a childless ghost. Vanessa Clark didn't just win a lawsuit. She executed a masterclass in patience. She proved that while money can buy lawyers, it cannot buy loyalty. And it certainly cannot buy back the time you wasted betraying the only person who truly had your back. Harrison spent the rest of his life dispatching trucks in the dark, forever haunted by the blue eyes of the son he sold for a check. What do you think? Did Harrison deserve to lose his son? Or was Vanessa's punishment too cruel? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and lets me bring you more intense stories like this one. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss the next episode of Billionaire Betrayals. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that karma is real and it has a very long memory. Thanks for watching.